What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. I'm recording and posting this one a little late today because work has gotten absolutely chaotic. So you may be getting videos from me a little later in the evening, but still hang out with your boy. Today, we're going to be having a conversation about breaking the spell of religion. And to really platform this conversation, we're actually going to be pulling some key points from Daniel C. Dennett's book of the same name, Breaking the Spell: Religion as a Natural Phenomenon. I actually wanted to have this conversation because many of you know that my best performing video, which is one of the earliest videos that I did, was about why atheism is spreading like wildfire. I think that was the name of it, or that atheism is spreading like wildfire. But in that video, in spite of the inflammatory title, the actual idea was to demonstrate how actually atheism seems to be a progression, a natural progression, and is something that we can actually map and somewhat predict in a way. And so that's why this book was very important to me, because it does the exact same thing with religion itself, not just the idea of theism and atheism, seeing these as natural phenomenons, but also religion itself. So I think this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation. Before we jump in, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell, and of course, if you haven't already, check out the merch. And I forgot the part about volunteering and connecting with the community. Do that too, in whatever way that makes sense for you. All right. So I've already kind of told you what book we're talking about today, which this was Dennett's philosophical exploration of religion from a scientific and evolutionary perspective. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit five main points from the book. The first point from the book that I want to hit, which I think many of you already know that I align very, very highly with, and that is that religion should be studied scientifically. And not only should it be studied scientifically, those who have already started studying it scientifically should be included in these conversations, which there are plenty of social science scientists who have already given plenty of thought to the study of religion. And I think that's likely why Daniel Dennett went in this direction, because he absolutely, likely as a philosopher, definitely ends up taking a very sociological perspective to this. And so basically, this is ultimately just about the objective inquiry into religion. Dennett refers to the spell as the societal taboo that discourages critical examination of religion. He argues that religion has been granted a special status that places it beyond the reach of skeptical scrutiny, which hinders understanding. And I think many of us can think of times where we've seen this to be true, primarily in ways that even in debates where you have proponents of positivism, or positivism of religion, who constantly kind of invoke this imagery that no, religion investigates something that science is incapable of investigating, without demonstrating that religion is capable of investigating this thing that you say science is incapable of investigating. And so disingenuously, we create these two different worlds, and give both of those worlds the exact same definite reality as we do reality. Which is very, to me, that's like, why are we even doing this? Why are we playing this game? And until you can actually demonstrate the utility of this without pulling on propaganda, I'm kind of uninterested in the claims. So I love this fact that he calls this out, because yes, religion has been given a special place for a long time, and I think the secular community has done we've done a poor job, likely trying to just be nice, trying to be human. We've done a poor job of really calling this out, um, historically. Obviously, over the past 20, 30 years, the secular community has become increasingly vocal. But I'm one of those people who think we still need to turn it up a few more notches. Um, but yeah, yeah. So he also he posits that religion is a product of natural processes, evolutionary, psychological, and socio-cultural, and should be studied using the methods of science. This includes forming hypotheses, gathering empirical data, and testing predictions. And see, and then that's the thing. This is why religion or proponents of religious positivism um, do not constantly want to keep religion in a separate category is so that they can keep religion from being properly interrogated, right? Because that's the only thing that keeps the mystery of religion mysterious is that there is no good faith interrogation into its methodology or its message. And so, and of course, he said, this includes, well, I think I said that, but forming hypotheses, gathering the data, and then testing those predictions. But of course, I think we can easily see that religion evolves from natural processes, primarily, even in the instance. I think in the instance of how to of why atheism is spreading like wildfire, I kind of talked about this idea of how superstitious thinking would have been necessary for survival at one point. And in spite of what religion has become today, and I kind of like to get on the people when we talk about this because it's not religion itself, it's people. These are the things that people are doing. It's people. Religion is not a real thing, it's a social construct that we put together. So when we really say that religion is doing something, we're talking about people. And that's why it's important to critically examine religion because you're learning something about humanity. But anyway, that's just my little TED talk. Thank you for showing up. Dennett encourages collaboration across disciplines: biology, psychology, anthropology, sociology, and cognitive science. Yes, to build a comprehensive understanding of how religions originate, spread, and influence human behavior. Which this is absolute paramount. This is in my ballpark. He anticipates objections from religious communities who might view scientific investigation as a threat to faith. Um, Dennett emphasizes that studying religion scientifically is not about disproving beliefs, but about understanding the mechanisms behind them. And that's the thing. So even in the video, again, I've probably said it like 4 times now, why atheism is spreading like wildfire. In that story, or in that conversation, the goal wasn't to say, here's why you should be an atheist, or the goal wasn't to say, here's why people who still believe are just absolutely bonkers, which I may do that on some videos. But no, the goal was to say, no, here's the history behind some of these movements. Here's a more sociological understanding. Here's some socio-cultural insight into our relationship with these things. And I like to have these type of conversations so we can kind of remove the fog of mystery. And I humbly believe that that's what Dennett was aiming for with this book, and not just aiming for, but apparently, knocked it out of the park. So yeah, and so I do love this because we do need a comprehensive understanding, of this thing, especially having conversations of it. And I think that'll empower the secular community, non-believers, skeptics, and free thinkers alike to be able to have more nuanced conversations and more effective conversations with believers that will be able to help them penetrate that cognitive dissonance. Um, this is good. I like this. Um, by demystifying religion, society can address issues like extremism, interfaith conflicts, and the role of religion in public policy more effectively. Understanding religion scientifically can inform education, healthcare, and governance. And even though it's taking and even though it's slower than many would like, I would like us to see that Dennett wasn't too far off, because we're starting to see some of that now as more and more people not just becoming atheists. It's not just as more and more people are becoming atheist or agnostic or humanist or what may have you. And you don't necessarily have to be an atheist to be a humanist. I know that one's a little tricky. But no, it's not just that atheists and the secular community are moving in a certain direction, or more of us are growing in number. It is also that religious people themselves are becoming less strict. They are becoming less devout. They are becoming more fluid in their interpretation of Scripture, and their interpretation of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. And they are also becoming more adamant about what Scripture and their religious views does not have the right to control, because that is a byproduct of secularization as well. It's a product of industrialization. It's a product of the information age, and it's a product of rampant individualism as well, where people's relationship with their religion is no longer defined by the group, by groupthink, but it's defined by their personal ideology. And these are things that I do like to call out more. But I think that Dennett, saw this almost ahead of his time, because we are seeing that now. The more and more religion is demystifying, the more and more you're having people who are still religious adherents that are damn near atheists. Which means they go to church for either the ritual or the community, but it doesn't mean anything else for them outside of that. They don't vote like believers. They don't drink like believers. They don't fuck like believers. You know what I'm saying? All of those type of things, because for them it is becoming increasingly more personal, which is where religion belongs. That's where people call religion a faith. I don't call religion a faith, because faith has validity in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like we use faith, and we often use the word good faith in business. I often use the word good faith when talking about conversations, in marital relationships, spousal relationships. We talk about faithfulness, because faith just really speaks to fidelity. The ability to depend on something. Is this dependable? You know what I'm saying? Faithful. Can I depend on this? So I don't call religion a faith, because it's not dependable. I call religion a hope. Religion is a hope. It's something that you hope will happen. It's not even a belief, because in a sense, just when you look at the idea of belief, in my opinion, belief needs to be justified. Hope doesn't have to be justified. You know, which is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of hope. You know, not a big fan of hope. Yep. I think there was a popular campaign where, and as soon as I saw the word hope, I was like, "Oh damn, I know what the future is going to look like." I'm sorry. All right, that's my politics spewing out. No, I just don't like hope. When I think of hope, few of my former contemporaries in Christian ministry, that's how they address themselves. They're hope dealers. They're dealing hope, and I'd much rather get the dope than the hope. I'm just saying. Um. Okay, so yes, I love it. I love it. So his another big point I wanted to pull from his book was the evolutionary origins of religion. Dennett explores how early humans developed religious behaviors that enhanced group survival. Shared beliefs and rituals fostered a strong group identity, cooperation, and altruism, which could improve a group's chances of survival in a harsh environment. Not only did they, or not only could they, but no, they did. This is what it was for. And I often give people, especially when you're thinking backwards, you're taking the long view of history. When I deconverted, the more and more I wrestled with it, it became clear that I don't have to hold myself to the misunderstandings of the past. And one of the things is that, like, at some point these beliefs were justifiable. You know what I'm saying? At some point they even would have been considered somewhat rational, because you wouldn't have had any other information that could definitively um, debunk this idea. And so, sure, for maybe up to, I don't even know, and I might be being generous here, but maybe up until the 1500s, I guess 1600s. Some of these things, it could be feasible for people to still believe, especially if they haven't been exposed to the minority of people who were pondering these questions. And then, even going further back than that, it would have been absolutely necessary for some people to believe certain religious superstitions, again, just for survival's sake. You don't have time to investigate, nor do you have the societal structure and societal safety in place to investigate whether the tree shaking is just the wind or if it's a lion. So you just go ahead and make it up that tree shaking is bad juju. You know what I'm saying? And you need to get the fuck out of Dodge or you might die. You know, and in the same way, if a lion is running at you, getting ready to eat you, you don't have the societal safety to wonder, I wonder what manner of lion is this? I wonder what motivates this lion to come after me with such veracity, or whatever. You know, there's another word there. We could use velocity, but I don't think that works either. But anyway, fear. It's something with furious. Ferocity, is that a word? That doesn't feel right. That Furiosa was a movie. Okay, I'm gonna get stuck on that rabbit trail. But the big point is, time is the gift that we've given ourselves. Time is what we give ourselves. Time is the gift of community. Time is the gift of collaboration. Time is the gift of cooperation. The more we cooperate as a society, the more time we give ourselves. And the more time we've given ourselves, the more time we have to ponder on those things and wonder, like, is there really a Santa Claus, though? You know what I'm saying? You get time, you start getting to think about those things. All right, but yeah, I like that. And then of course, just the idea of memes and mimetic evolution, which I want to say was popularized by Richard Dawkins. Every now and then, I want to call him Charles Dawkins. That's funny. But anyway, then it introduces the concept of memes, units of cultural information that replicate and evolve. Religious ideas are seen as memes that spread because they are catchy, emotionally resonant, or useful, not necessarily because they are true. And this is something that we dealt with in our Sunday sessions just yesterday about the different variations of truth. And I think one of the types of truth that people have become most accustomed to. Um, in a lot of circles is pragmatic truth. And I almost want to say it's a pseudo pragmatic truth because pragmatic truth deals with the utility of a fact, the utility of knowledge, and how that knowledge is used, and whether it can um, and whether it can achieve an end, a specified end. And so in many ways, what happens to people is that false information becomes true because enough people agree to it around them, and for them to disagree with it would not be helpful for their lives. And this is what confuses them about, oftentimes, about what is true. And that's just a little rabbit trail, because it's like, if it was true, why doesn't it work? And that's what happens when misinformation becomes so strong that it gets culturally encoded. And that's what I love about the allegory of the cave, is that transition towards truth becomes very uncomfortable. And it becomes not even almost, it becomes transformative, and impacts your ability to see the world, and furthermore impacts your ability to understand the world that you left behind. So many of us who have fully deconverted, while we still remember those experiences and know what it was like, and remembered how much we loved the Lord, and how much we just loved worshiping for hours, hallelujah, all day long and all that shit. As much as we can remember and recall all of that, all because our transformation has changed us so much, or because our journey towards what we consider truth or reality has transformed us so much, it is damn right difficult, damn near impossible to even fathom what the fuck we were thinking. It's just like, what were you doing, bruh? Like, you were just sitting there speaking in tongues for 3 hours. Really? Like, bruh, like it's that's okay. So, but just like genes, memes undergo variation and selection, religious memes that are more effective at capturing human attention and motivating behavior or are more likely to be transmitted to future generations, which I think this is important for us to understand, not just for the sake of religion, but this is also important for us to understand um, just about how social influence works, period, because we are definitely um, either in the peak or plateau, and I literally mean either one. We're either at the top of that or we're at the plateau of that. And what the world looks like on the other side of that is anybody's guess. Because this, understanding this, and I don't know how much of the mimetic evolution has been, I don't know how much has been tested out and proved out. It's as a sociologist, I'm absolutely fascinated by it, and it feels right to me. But I don't just attach myself to it because it feels right. But I don't know if it's been tested out yet. But I think it's something that we should spend a lot more time thinking about, because this definitely shows how information passes. But it's also something that I think big marketing companies have already known. You know what I'm saying? Religious practices often involve significant sacrifices of time, resources, or even physical hardship, which serves as costly signals of commitment to the group. This deters free riders and enhances group cohesion. And actually, I think there's a lot to be said about that. Man, that there is. Oh my goodness, there is. Because it's like human sacrifice all the way down. But it's like for the and it's funny because lately, even within our community in Bridge City, we've been talking about the need to move away from the word volunteers for our team members, and primarily because this for those of us who come from the church, volunteer was like volunteering for tribute. Like you're going to be you're going to be sacrificed. Your time doesn't matter anymore, and I just didn't want that connotation for our team. So we're looking at a different way to approach that. We already have our system structured where we're really mindful of people time so they can volunteer in kind of like micro doses, and all of that's kind of clarified once before they start volunteering. But now just kind of thinking about that aspect of human sacrifice is that, ooh, okay, so that's gonna be a rabbit hole in my head. I'm gonna spend some time there. Shared religious norms and moral codes can regulate behavior, reduce conflict within the group, and establish social hierarchies. Religion may also have evolved to help humans cope with existential fears, such as death and natural disasters, providing psychological comfort. And this is and I love the way that he kind of attacks this or attacks this in the book, because this is something when we talk about religion providing comfort. I want us to start being very clear about what we mean there. Because even though we're saying those words are accurate. They're not inaccurate, but they are incomplete. Um, Religion doesn't provide people with comfort because religion is comfortable. The thing that people are uncomfortable with is the question mark. Okay? The question mark of what happens when I die, or what happened when my mama died. Where does she go? That's a question mark. Question mark of why do bad things happen in the world? These are question marks. And for many people, they don't have the answers to those questions. For most people, they don't have the answers to those questions. And religion sells this idea that if you don't have the answers to those questions, it's because you're incapable. And this world is big and scary. And so then religion takes the fear of the unknown, accelerates it, like acts as a catalyst for that fear, attaching other fears to it, and then pretends to have the answers to replace the question marks. So it's not the fact that imagining your mom stuck around a throne all day singing with mutated angels to an old guy all day, every day. That's not a comforting thought. It's just the fact that that person feels like they know something. That's how religion That's the only way that I think we can truly say religion comforts anybody. Because again, after being in ministry in 20 years, and after performing funerals, after attending funerals, I never saw people happy at the funerals. No one was so glad that grandma gets to go to Jesus. And I've watched a lot of people on their deathbed, and in spite the way things get portrayed in Christian movies, I ain't see nobody like, oh, I can see my Savior now. No, no. I heard one pastor say it like this: everybody loved Jesus, but ain't nobody in a hurry to meet him. You know, and that was that was a true fact. I loved it. Okay. Yeah. And so and that's why Dennett highlights it as psychological comfort and not necessarily emotional comfort. Um, but religions compete for adherence. Those that are better at attracting and retaining followers tend to spread more widely. Over time, religions can become more complex, adopting new doctrines and rituals to adapt to changing social environments, which we have seen. Another big point that I wanted to pull or platform from his book is religion as a byproduct of cognitive processes. Um, and that humans evolved to be hyper aware of agents being capable of intentional action in the environment as a survival mechanism. This tendency can lead to the perception of supernatural agents, gods, spirits behind natural events. And for those of us who are parents, you can see this with your children, right? Especially when they're in those toddler phases. You can see them if they have an instance with a swing, and on one particular swing they fall out the swing. All of a sudden, that's the bad swing. That swing hurt them on purpose. That swing had agency, if you will, or if they fall into a bush and the bush pricks them, you know, them young ages, that's the bad bush, that's the mean bush. Because at this moment in their emotional and cognitive development, this is the only way they have of articulating the experience that they have with these things. Now, because those of us who used to attach ourselves to religious superstition believe that man just came out the dirt and was fully formed and started, we forget that, no, this is an evolutionary process. And so I'm an advocate of, a lot of the things that we're confused about when it comes to evolution, we can, for some of it, and obviously this is not just 100% parallel, but we can kind of see those things mirrored in our own biological development. So literally looking at the conception from conception to birth of children of the human species, you can see some things that kind of show some evolutionary stuff there. But then also with our children, so when people ask me the question about, well, where do you think people get morality from? Well, I've watched my children long enough to see how they interacted with each other when they were young and how they formed their sense of morality around this idea of well-being, starting with their own. You know, so I always kind of tell this story that my youngest daughter, she used to pinch my oldest daughter a lot, and just like used to kind of torture her a little bit. But eventually, she realized, like, if I keep doing this, then my big sister is not going to want to play with me. And so so there are certain things she stopped doing to protect her own sense of well-being, and at the same time learn the value of her sister's sense of well-being. And and to me, when we look at things like that, it's just like, well, damn, that's not very mysterious at all. You know, it's not. It's the same way. Like it's I don't know. These things are not mysterious to me. Um, And then, of course, he also deals with the theory of mind. Our ability to infer the thoughts and feelings of others extends to attributing mental states to non human entities or forces, which we do. Natural phenomenons are often explained by attributing human like intentions to them all the time, in this sort of anthropomorphic way. The storm is angry. Well, I think that language. I think metaphor itself exists in us, and we're so attracted to it. Number one, because it does make it easier to understand things, because if you tell the kid, back in these days that, hey, it's getting ready to storm, it's going to rain real hard, the roads are going to be, or the fields are going to be slippery, the water might get high, none of that connotates to, none of that actually speaks to the possible danger and the possible damage that can take place. But when you say the storm is angry, then the child knows, oh, I need to get the fuck out of Dodge, or the storm is going to kick my ass, type of situation. That's the power of language. So I love that. And of course, the human brain is wired, and I do like to use that word carefully, to recognize patterns, even where none exists, leading to superstitions or seeing signs in random events. And we see this often. Most of us, in a very non-superstitious way, can at least account, one or two times where it's been raining, storming one night, and you look out the window and you think you see some frightening face, and then eventually the more you allow yourself to look at it, and the more you allow yourself to wrestle with what you're seeing, you see, oh, it's not a frightening face, it's actually just some trees, blowing in the wind. And that's an example of how our minds are seeing those patterns, and typically that happens to fill in the gaps of the information that we don't have yet. And as we fill in the information, the mind almost kind of autocorrects in real time. So, in real time, as your brain is being fed more information about what it's actually seeing, the image is being updated before your very eyes, in real time. So, it goes from looking like a very scary monster to looking like possibly a peeping Tom to looking like, well, is that just an animal? And so finally, oh, those are just branches. You know, it's like your mind is um, iteratively replaying the image until it gets on something that internally you say, "Oh, I got it," and then the image no longer changes. Okay, now that's just me rambling, but you know. And of course, humans construct stories to make sense of the world, and these narratives often evolve into religious myths. And because there's another aspect of religion, and one of the things that I always like to highlight for people that I think people miss is that all religion, for the most part, is ancestor worship. All religion, for the most part, is ancestor worship, and that's really the attachment. You know, so many times it's not that the people have their attachment to this to the deity many times, and most times they don't even have a real attachment to the doctrines. It's the people who pass these doctrines and deities down to them that they honor and don't want to run the risk of dishonoring them. You know, um, so that's just a little insight there. Biological evolution and cultural evolution interact. Cognitive predispositions inherited genetically can influence cultural developments like religion. Concepts that are slightly out of the ordinary are memorable and spread more easily. So, like a being that is invisible but can hear prayers. You know, it's slightly out of the ordinary. You know, like a being that is visible and that can hear prayers just wouldn't be interesting at all. So that story is likely not going to spread that much. You know, like when Tupac was alive, there wasn't a bunch of stories spreading about seeing Tupac. When Elvis was alive, there weren't a bunch of stories spreading about seeing Elvis because it's too ordinary. Yeah, I could have saw Elvis, but after Elvis died, then all of a sudden, one person says, I saw Elvis in Mexico. And next thing you know, everybody has seen Elvis in Mexico. And so, that's just my way of giving an example of that one. Um, and he also says, he talks about cognitive byproducts. So just as architectural spandrels are byproducts of building design, certain cognitive processes are byproducts of evolution. That while not adaptations themselves can give rise to complex phenomena like religion. And then, of course, the fourth point I wanted to pull from here is that he does spend some time assessing the impact of religion, which is where I spend a lot of my time at as well. Dennett calls for systematic collection of data on the effects of religion, including psychological well being, social cohesion, and ethical behavior. Sorry. He suggests examining historical and contemporary examples where religion has played a significant role in societal events. And that's not just he's not just talking about conflicts and disasters, but he's also talking about humanitarian efforts as well. And of course, many of you know I've talked about the church's role, specifically Christianity, the church's role in humanitarian efforts. And I love the fact that Dennett proposed taking a more data-driven approach to this, because as of now, much of what the church has done and been doing, it's been able to self-identify and self-testify and self-congratulate without any outside investigation until something truly horrible happens, and then we go in and like, oh dang, they was doing this to these kids this whole time. And even though everybody wants to go to the more inflammatory essay, and this is what I don't like about sensationalism, because then you, for whatever reason, then we overlook all of the children who are getting emotionally abused and physically abused. If it wasn't SA, then we're not interested. And it's like, man, no, we should be interested in all of it. We should be interested in cognitive abuse. We should we should be interested in any institutions that are pressuring children and teenagers not to cognitively develop. You know what I'm saying? We should be invested into that, but also understanding, knowing the viewpoints of many of these religions on violence towards children. We should be concerned that it's the majority of that it's by a long shot majority religious institutions that have assigned themselves to these problems. And so, yes, we need the case studies, we need the data driven analysis, and that is something that I am trying to pour myself into. Research it's real work. All work is real work, but research is real work, and it takes a lot. It takes a load, and hopefully, as we continue to build our community, we'll have some people in place that can do some things like that. Um, Religious organizations often do provide social services, charity, and a sense of belonging. And for many, religions offers guidance on ethical issues and personal conduct, which I often find when we investigate it, we find those. We find that guidance to be shallow sometimes and oversimplified to a fault. And that might be worth a whole conversation of its own. But those are just some of the positive impacts, because Dennett's goal was to be very unbiased in his presentation, and I think he did an excellent job in the book. But he does hit the negative impacts as well. And he said, religious differences have been a source of wars, terrorism, and persecution. Because contrary to what religion teaches, especially again Christianity, because that would be my context, religion kind of presents itself as this unifier, and in this way, it's this unifier that's shifting us away from tribalism. But in all actuality, it's not a unifier. It's not shifting us away from tribalism. It's just absorbing us into a much bigger tribe so it can pick on the other tribes. But of course, then there's also the suppression of inquiry, because dogmatic beliefs often hinder scientific process and critical thinking. And even to this day, like we're no longer in the dark ages, but even to this day, if you say certain things that are scientifically true, there are religious people who will still try to get you harmed in some way or another, whether it's fired from your job or something, or whatever. These are real issues. And then, of course, obviously, religious doctrines can perpetuate gender inequality, homophobia, and other forms of discrimination. And I'm not just going to put that one on religion. Not only does religious doctrines do that, nationalism does that as well. And I think that's something that in this country, I do hope that we get to understanding one day very soon. Because it all ends up it all ends up creating an us versus them. You know, and I'm hoping, I don't know when it'll happen, but I'm hoping soon, and very soon we'll get past that. You know, and realize that it's just us. It's just us. We're all us. Um, Dennett argues that moral behavior can be grounded in secular philosophy, such as humanism, which emphasizes empathy, reason, and mutual respect. And he points out that societal moral standards have evolved over time, often moving beyond traditional religious teachings. And I won't even say not just often moving beyond, but also moving ahead of. And so, which is something that I think religious proponents are incredibly disingenuous about. Um, Morality has not followed religion. Religion has followed morality. It is always morality that has had to chastise religion to make it grow up a little bit, and it's always a little too late. A dollar, what is it? A day late and a dollar short. Type of thing. So religion has not really ever been on the forefront of progress. It's just it's all from what I say. It's at least from an African American's perspective, and from the perspective of looking at things like slavery, looking at things like interracial marriages and those rights, looking at things such as women rights, looking at things such as the rights of the Pride community. All of these things, the people you were fighting to get these rights were the Christians. You know, just like many rights that people are fighting for in some Middle Eastern countries, the people they're having to fight for those rights are the Muslims. You know, so I don't get what people are what history playbook people are going by when they say religion has given us morality. No, like literally humanism has had to fight religion tooth and nail at every point of evolution. And then once religion finally gets on the bandwagon, it becomes the loudest person on the bus and pretends like it was driving the whole time, you know. Um And then religious institutions may resist societal reforms, kind of the stuff that I just hit, women's rights, due to adherence to traditional doctrines. And fear of divine punishment or guilt over failing to meet religious standards can negatively impact mental health. And also, that guilt can often be manipulated to make people harm other people. So there are plenty of people out there who are absolutely disgusting to members of the to members of the Pride community, because they feel like if I'm not being disgusting to you, then I won't win the favor of my imaginary father, you know. And that's dangerous, that's dangerous. And then the last one that I want to pull from his book is promoting education and open dialogue. Dennett advocates for comprehensive education about various religions, their histories, beliefs, and practices in a neutral and academic manner. Understanding different religions can promote tolerance and reduce prejudice. Individuals should be encouraged to question and explore religious beliefs, including their own, to develop a well informed worldview. And then teaching logic, reasoning, and philosophy can empower people to think critically about complex issues. To this day, one of my favorite books that I've read, and I know it's probably back here behind one of these awards, was Plato's Republic. Like when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, where's this book been my whole life? Because it kind of just the way it read, it was like, oh, I love this. Um, because really, philosophy is kind of like about just kind of getting down to the heart of the matter, if you will. Not the best phraseology for it, but that's the best I'm going to do for now. But he goes on to talk about how society um, should safeguard the rights of individuals to express differing views on religion without fear of retribution. Open conversations between believers and non-believers can bridge divides and promote mutual understanding in some places. And again, that's what I really loved about this book, is that he did an amazing job at remaining nuanced and unbiased, and in my biased opinion. Um, Dennett supports the separation of religious and state to ensure that public policies are based on reason and evidence, benefiting all citizens regardless of their beliefs. And I will say this to the atheist and secular community, who are also supporters of separation and state. A good idea for us to do here would be to reach across the aisle and form a coalition with believers who are also supporters of separation church and state, of religion and state. Just a thought. Just a thought. And of course, decisions impacting society should be made through rational deliberation, considering diverse perspectives, which is something that I wholeheartedly agree with. I think some of you see one of the reasons I don't really like politics is because I don't like some of the bullying that goes on, and where people can't have diverse perspectives because your differences of opinion is villainized, and I think that's horrible. Um, I think that's horrible. I'm not, and this may make some people uncomfortable, but I'm just not. I'm not of the persuasion that if somebody doesn't agree with me, even if it's something that I find absolutely deplorable, that that person is absolutely deplorable. You know, things just, I don't know. I find terminology like that many times unhelpful. And there's a word, inflammatory. I think there was another word that I wanted to use, but that'll work for now. That'll do, pig. Um, and then as societies evolve, religions may need to adapt to remain relevant, possibly shifting towards more metaphorical interpretations of doctrines. Which, yeah, that's, to me, that's always been the case. There is no religion that I've seen, and again, obviously, I'm coming from a Western perspective, um, as that's where I'm currently geolocated. um, but there isn't a religion today that hasn't evolved to remain relevant. You know, even if it hasn't evolved to all the places we'd want it to, but they're all revolving to main evolving to remain relevant in the context of relevance that's important for them. I mean, even the Amish community has evolved in some sense. And through education and dialogue, it's possible for religious and secular worldviews to coexist peacefully, focusing on shared human values. And if there are any religious people that are watching this, um, please understand that that is for the most part, at least my perspective when it comes to humanism. And what I would like, it's not that I don't want a world where people aren't allowed to hope in whatever they want to hope in, and that's literally that's what I'm gonna start saying instead of belief and instead of faith. um, that's not the point. I don't. If you want to hope that there's a guy in the sky, that hope doesn't hurt anybody. If you want to hope that after you die that there's some peaceful place, I'm hoping that you're hoping for something a little better than heaven, because heaven sounds like it sucks. But if you want to hope that there's like a really dope after party, you know what I'm saying? Afterlife, after party. I love it. Afterlife, after party. Oh, are y'all gonna join me for my afterlife after party? Okay, now that sounds a little cultish. Yep. I just, yeah, felt uncomfortable coming out. Afterlife, after party. Join me. You know. But if you want to hope for that, then I find no harm for that. You know. And then even if you want to talk about that hope and you say, this is what I hope happens one day. That's healthy conversation. It's when we take those hopes and turn them into sincerely held beliefs that we do harm towards ourselves, you know. And the thing about beliefs is that beliefs then don't just become about what you hope happens for you. Belief becomes about what you believe will happen to others if they don't hope for what you hope for, you know. All right, so Daniel Dennett's Breaking the Spell: Religion as a Natural Phenomenon challenges his readers to consider religion not as an untouchable sacred domain, but as a human construct that can be studied and understood through science and reason. By examining the evolutionary, cognitive, and cultural foundations of religious belief, Dennett seeks to uncover the natural processes that give rise to religion. He emphasizes the importance of evaluating religion's impact on individuals and societies objectively, recognizing both its potential benefits and harms. Dennett advocates for education and open dialogue as means to promote understanding, critical thinking, and freedom of thought. Ultimately, he envisioned a society where people can make informed decisions about their beliefs, where religion can adapt in positive ways, and where secular and religious individuals can collaborate to address common challenges. By breaking the spell, Dennett hoped to remove the barriers that prevent constructive examination of religion, contributing to a more enlightened and harmonious world. Um, Dennett's work remains pertinent in contemporary discussions about the role of religion in public life, science, education, and global conflicts rooted in religious differences. He didn't, in the book, he doesn't aim to eradicate religion, which is something that I, sort of praised him for throughout this conversation, but to encourage a more transparent and rational discourse about it, inviting both believers and non-believers to participate in this endeavor. And I think that's beautiful. And I think Dennett was onto something. I think this is how we break the spell, and this is why I commit to sharing the type of content that I do on this channel. It's why I commit to going through different books. It's why I commit to sharing information from my own level of so-called expertise or whatnot. It's why I commit to building community on Sundays and Wednesdays. It's why I commit to building a team, is because we have to build bridges. And these bridges aren't just about bridges between science and religion. No, that's not what the bridges are, because I don't believe that religion exists separately from the domain of science, especially when you consider the social sciences. It absolutely does not. It exists within the domain of social sciences. That was the reason I switched my major from education to social sciences, because I felt that as a pastor at the time, this was in my wheelhouse. Like, this is talking about my world. And it was actually a good inclination, because I was not wrong. One of my the big book that I'm working on, other than the novel, but the big book that I'm working on is called The Case for Religion, which will be more of a scholarly work. um, much of that work that much of the work that I'm doing, I'm pulling from uh, old sociologists, such as Max Weber, such as Emil Durkheim, which I'll actually be pulling a lot from Emil. But yeah, so if you haven't read that book yet, go check it out, Breaking the Spell. And do I have anything else to say? I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope this gave you something to think about. Sorry that this was a little late. But yeah. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful if you can. I'll holla.